My name is Jeff Hodges, and I have for the past 10 years or so been the author and keeper of the Dr. Spin's Musical Music blog. 2019 I thought I would try something a little bit different. I have some friends, and we've thought long and hard on and off about trying video blog approach, and I don't really want to use this format to replace what I've been doing on the blog, because I still enjoy doing that, but I would like to kind of venture out, try something different, see if the different avenues open up because of this. Now, I'll be upfront with you right now. The first few of these are going to be really super lo-fi. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things about them that sort of are examples of things that I hate whenever I look at other people's video blogs, and I understand why they're there. So forgive me. You have to forgive me as we get through these first few. And I'm going to do a little bit piece by piece here and there, and we'll learn stuff, how to edit and how to put little bling blings here and there, and make it worth your while to stick around and listen to some new music. Maybe find some ways to get some new music for yourself. So initially, I started writing the blog in 2008, 2009, as I was finishing up my master's degree and in ethnomusicology. And I was using it as a venue to write, because I was writing a whole bunch during the course of my master's degree, and a lot of those early blog posts were kind of hyper academic CD reviews. CD, of course, being my chosen format, so more on that. If you haven't figured that out yet, you need to go back and read the blog for sure. But that went really well for a long time, and I enjoyed that, but it sort of started feeling a little bit repetitive, and sometimes I felt like I was like digging for a topic when really I just wanted to talk about the music. So it slowly evolved into sort of these auto-ethnographic vignettes, and for a long time, and still a good portion of the blog is written that way. And I still find that format very rewarding. I think that, well, I personally can tell you that I listen to a lot of music, and I use a lot of music to sort of mark the time that I'm in. You know, I'll go back and say, oh, I was listening to this during this time, and this thing was happening there, and it's nice to try to capture those moments and make them a little more real by putting them in print. But you know, things go on, and time changes, and I've had some kids, and having time and mental energy to sit down and write something and make it sound good is sometimes difficult. It's hard to find some quiet time to do it. I happen to have some quiet time right now to try this out, so we'll see how it rolls out. So in recent times I've posted less, and I know that it's been more about just documenting what I've been listening to. And I think that in essence that's one of the most important parts of what I've been doing with the blog for myself personally. Because I'm able to go back and look at a document and say, okay, this happened during this time, what was I listening to? Oh yeah, that's right, that was a great album. How long has it been since I've listened to that? Oh wow, it's been a long time. So all of that's still going to be in place. I'm not going to let that change because of maybe opening up this new venue. But so for example, probably you'll still see in probably mid-February another roundup post where I sort of talk about all the albums I've been listening to and give a little short 2-sentence impressions of them as I go along, and maybe accompany it with some sort of anecdote or something that's going on with me. But this is going to be sort of a little preview of all the stuff, the music I got coming up out of the holidays and maybe through the end of January. Not to the point where I've actually formed really serious opinions about these albums yet, because I'm just now kind of starting to get into them. But just sort of what I'm going to be listening to in the next couple of months. Maybe you can, if you're interested, check it out yourself. And we can meet at the other end and see how things shake down. Okay, so I'm going to start with just the stuff that I have been listening to in my car. Now, the reason that these first 6 discs, I think actually ended up in the car, was because in the house I listen to a lot of music in the house, but I'm a progressive rock fan, and I like a lot of kind of sometimes music that's a little more challenging and hard to listen to. And that music doesn't always fly over well in the house, just because nobody wants to be irritated by Dad's music or whatever else. So my initial pass on these first 6 albums, I kind of thought, well, I'll listen to them, but they're going to be more likely to be, I'll be able to appreciate them more in the solitude and the closed-in space of my car. So again, we've just been kind of listening to these the last few days, but I want to give you an idea. So the first one I wanted to show was this one, Anglagard's Epilogue. Now this is Anglagard's a progressive rock group, a pretty adventurous progressive rock group. They've been around since the early 90s, and some people would even argue that they kind of were the reason that progressive rock held on in the early 90s. They were doing very unique versions of progressive rock that were definitely steeped in the norms from the 70s, whenever bands were creating the style, but doing them in very new and different ways. Now they're a Swedish group. On Epilogue, it sounds like, just from my first couple passes, there's no vocals on them, and that's a little more standard. Their first album had some vocals on them, and their most recent one had no vocals, if I remember correctly. But this one sounds like it's mostly instrumental, but definitely has the same really angular, aggressive approach to progressive rock that I find appealing to them. To me, I find appealing. It's kind of like what would happen if the sort of stream of consciousness compositional approach that Rush used for Olivia Strangiato was coupled with the really aggressive angular approach that Red Air at King Crimson had, with some gratuitous Hammond organ and flute as a main lead instrument. You can imagine all that at once. That's kind of where Anglagard's coming from. So particularly excited about this one. It's been sitting on my wish list for a long time. I have on a previous post talked about how I discovered Anglagard on Napster back in those days, but never really got Epilogue because the import price was really a pretty high price tag for that CD. And then whenever it finally came down, it was released domestically. I kind of just put it off. So finally, I was really happy to see Epilogue show up in my holiday stash for this year. So I'm excited about that one. Second one I got going on right now is the new John Coltrane Lost album, Both Directions at Once. John Coltrane, of course, legendary jazz musician, saxophone player. That album has a really good set of liner notes to it that I could sit down and read to you, and it would be fascinating, but you could just probably find on your own. The album sort of sits at a crossroads, I think, from what I'm reading it, of when John Coltrane was really about to launch into his more experimental phase, but was still kind of thinking about more commercial applications of what he was doing. It was recorded in like a day, but it has the argument for actually being a lost album is that there's a certain coherency to it, to the sessions that make it feel like it's an album, not just a collection of like tracks that were sitting around that they put together for no reason. Playing on it's great. Lots more there to check out. Okay, next one is this disc by a band called the Deep Energy Orchestra. Now, I'll be upfront with you. I'm not a fan of the album art on this one. I'm very often attracted to bands through their album art. I'm not going to lie. But this one is, I can't really say that I like it very much. It looks pretty like just some fancy font work done with a cool background. But the pedigree of the musicians was a good sell, pretty serious sell. Trey Gunn from King Crimson is playing war guitar on the album. He's a touch style guy, and if I ever have a chance to listen to Trey Gunn, I'm going to take it. He's a phenomenal player and a really great voice on the instrument. Also, he's playing with a bass player, and as a person who's played stick with bass players before, it's always a challenge to stay away from the bass side, let the bass player do his thing, and still play stick. So it's really been interesting as I've been listening to it some to listen to how he dodges, stays out of the way of the bass player, lets the bass player take that role. But even more interesting, if that wasn't interesting enough, there's also a very strong ethnomusicological aspect to it. There was a tabla player and a violin player, both of which are pretty steeped in Indian music training, classical styles. Trey Gunn had a guy that played tabla on one of his solo albums, The Joy of Maladina, which is one of my favorite albums by anyone. It's a great instrumental album. But the guy played great tabla in the context of like a way to append the drum set. He's a drum set player that knew how to play tabla. This guy is definitely more steeped in the tradition. He does some staccatos and vocalizations, definitely knows what he's doing. So very interested in seeing how that all pans out. Initial passes have been great. It actually goes over very well in the house. But I want to listen to it up close and personal in the car too. Next up is Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Now, I haven't bought a hip hop album in a long time. It's been quite a long time actually. But about a month and a half ago, I put Dr. Dre's The Chronic in, and I mean, what can you say about that album? It was really influential to me at the time. I didn't really understand or get into rap or hip hop, and that thing came along in, what was it, early 90s, 93 or so, and really changed the way I listen to that stuff, all that kind of music. So I don't buy a whole lot of hip hop, but I try to make the ones I buy count. And it seemed like the time had come. So many people have said so many great things about this album, this Kendrick Lamar album, that I really felt like I couldn't pass up the opportunity to at least check it out and be well informed on it. It ended up in the car almost immediately though, because I have kids, and so whenever you've got a album with significant explicatives on it, which is par for the course on a lot of hip hop and rap music, you have to be careful about where you're listening to it, especially when you have young ears around that like to repeat things in inopportune times. So that album ended up in the car, but one of the reasons why I kind of started thinking about listening to hip hop again was due to Dr. Dre, and guess what? Second track, Dr. Dre shows up and makes a guest appearance. So I'm really excited about that. Also, Thundercat's on there too. I had his album from a few years ago that I really thought was great as well. Probably should go back and listen to, actually. It's been a while on that one. So that's the next one. So up next is Riverside. Riverside's new album, Wasteland, new by just last year's standards. Again, very often, especially this time of year, I look for new music by looking at last year's best of list, and this one came up quite a bit on lots of people's best of lists. I rediscovered Riverside about 2 or 3 years ago, I guess 3 years ago, whenever Love, Hate, and the Time Machine came out. I think that's the name of the album. That album was pretty important for a transitional time for me whenever I was kind of changing careers. I listened to it a lot in the car driving around, and really unique, distinctive, melodic approach to that album that I thought was really engaging. I liked it a lot. And then, the interesting thing, that guitar player from Riverside passed on kind of surprisingly later on that year, I think, maybe at the beginning of last year. And so I kind of thought the Riverside was going to be put on the shelf a little bit. The lead singer has a side project called Lunatic Soul, which I think is a fantastic project. In some ways, I think it's better than Riverside. So I kind of thought that he would be focusing on that, but I was surprised to find out that Riverside was going on without too much of a bump in the road. And the new album sounds good. I like it. I don't know if I like it as much as some of the other stuff I've heard previously, but like with a lot of progressive rock stuff, you kind of have to listen to it a while to kind of hear what's going on. So I'm still kind of on the first superficial layer, which sometimes can be a little bit, what's the word? It could seem a little bit cliche, but usually after you listen to it for a while, the inner layers of what's going on reveal themselves. So I'll be giving that one a spin for a while to make sure I have a good read on it. Okay, last one for today is this new album that I got. It's the 2018 release from a band called Oak, and it's called False Memory Archive. Now, I put the first Oak album, their debut album, on my wish list a couple of years ago, and because it gotten such really high marks and great reviews from a lot of my favorite progressive rock websites. But whenever I gave it the first track a listen, I was kind of medium on it, and I didn't love it, but I didn't really hate it either. I was kind of in the middle, and the import price on the CD was pretty high, so I never really felt compelled to push the button on it. But it never felt like I should take it off my wish list either. It just sat there. But when this album came out last year, actually I really didn't even know it had come out until I started looking at some year-end lists, and it got really good reviews too. A lot of people spoke very highly of the way that it sort of has one foot in the past and one foot in the future, and doesn't really sound like old school progressive rock, but definitely has that feel to it. I got really re-interested in it. Plus, again, I like the album art on this one. The album art, you probably can't see it from me just holding it up, but it's very, very pretty and evocative album art. So I got it, and it immediately made a really great impression on me. I really thought that as a lot of people had said, is that, you know, one minute it has this very kind of post Steven Wilson melancholy to it, but it's not just a Steven Wilson clone. The guy's voice is very distinctive in and of itself. And, you know, then every now and then a Hammond organ will show up, or a saxophone. They'll bring it back to a little bit more progressive rock roots, so it feels like it straddles that fence without meaning to. I don't think their intention is to make it sound like, oh, we have to make sure we sound like retro. Some bands definitely do that, but I don't think that's the case with Oak. I think that they're doing something genuine, and that's probably why it sells so well, to me at least. Okay, so that's my first kind of run on CDs that I got from the holidays anyway. And I have a couple more chapters of these videos coming out in the next few weeks. We'll figure out good ways to streamline and make it work. And we'll kind of give you some previews on stuff coming up. And then, you know, a few weeks down the road, whenever I get to my wrap-ups and my other things that I do for the blog, we'll kind of all be on the same page. And I really appreciate you sticking around for all this and powering through my learning curve on how to do video blog. And hopefully you got something out of it, maybe some music you might want to listen to for later on. And again, I'd like to thank my friend Snoopy for inspiring me to get on and start trying to make this happen. Again, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he and I will start to collaborate on a separate video blog too. So if that happens, I will definitely point you that direction, because that's pretty exciting for both of us as well. All right, thanks again, and have a good day wherever you are. Take care. Bye.